It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Joe Steckler, and welcome to Helping Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. Our topic today is legal and financial aspects of closing an old year and opening a new one. And joining me is Bill Johnson, board-certified elder law attorney of William A. Johnson, PA, and Beth Courtney, financial advisor. It's a pleasure, Bill, and a pleasure, Beth, to have you both here today because I'm going to read, and I'm going to glance down at my notes list, viewers, because I want to set the stage for what we're going to talk about, because Bill and Beth will comment on very important things that you need to know about ending an old and opening a new year with regard to your financial and legal aspects. I'm going to read the stage. Here's our setting. If family members arrive for the holiday and they find, first, upset in the family due to failure to keep the family informed of dementia onset. This leads to a discussion of family planning for emergencies, discovery of inadequate documentation in place for legal and financial matters, minimal knowledge of financial assets itself, the failure of family members to know what to do, the realization that all family members are not in agreement, inadequate legal documentation, the will is out of date due to a second marriage, and the family is completely ignorant of available community assets to help their mother and father. Can you picture something could be more chaotic? Can you, Bill?
Yes, I can.
You can picture something more chaotic than that?
Oh, I can think of things a lot more chaotic than that.
But it probably ranks right up there.
Yeah. I don't even want to hear about this. You talk about this today.
Yeah, that's not all that uncommon, actually. You know, when we look at what a senior has as far as planning goes, we're looking at their estate planning, their incapacity planning, and their long-term care planning. And it's not unusual for the kids to show up, you know, Christmas time. Mom and dad have been saying, oh yeah, we're doing fine. You know, when the kids ask how you doing, they go, good. And all of a sudden the kids show up and, you know, there's a full-blown crisis going on. You know, both of them have dementia, or one of them's got a long-term care illness of some other sort, and somebody else has got dementia, or they can't take care of each other, that kind of thing. And next thing you know, everybody's scrambling, looking for documents that haven't been looked at in, 20 years and can't find them. Then the next question is, how are we going to pay for all this? You know, we need to have somebody here. What if they can't stay here? And it just goes on and on and on.
But when you talk about pay for it, the sad situation at most of families that are involved in situations like this don't want to spend assets that could be spent to resolve those issues because they want to save that money.
Well, that's part of the ongoing struggle.
That's the struggle.
True.
Okay.
There's people who think they're entitled to an inheritance. And if you're spending that money on mom and dad's care, that's less dollars that are going to the kids.
You're spending my money.
Correct.
Right.
And I've had people exactly put it in those terms, too.
They say it that way?
Yeah, I've said it that way exactly.
Beth?
Yes.
Can you even talk about, after he has completely taken over this stage? No, from a financial aspect.
Well, I was going to say that's mostly his wheelhouse anyway, but the financial aspect is a critical one. You're having those conversations with people who are thinking about the fact that, either they were hoping something was left, or even if not for themselves, just hoping that they can make it through whatever term of time, however many years that care might be required. Will we have enough to make sure that mom or dad are cared for in the way that we would hope that they would be cared for.
Right. But what, as a financial advisor, what, in the situation that I've described, what are sort of a common thread that you see when you try to work financial matters with seniors?
Always the conversation is, how long do we have to plan for? Is it 20 years, 30 years, that kind of thing? And how are we going to put those pieces together based on what they've accumulated through the years and what we think might happen? You know, we can't necessarily predict a long-term care event on the horizon, but we have to assume that the longer they live, the greater likelihood it is that they're going to have that experience. And how are we going to fund that?
Yep. Years ago, Bill and another financial advisor and a funeral home director did a lot of estate planning type shows. And we talked about a three-legged stool. And we talked about those pieces. We don't have the third leg. We don't have the funeral home guy on this show. But we do have the financial and the legal aspect here. And what you do legally and what you do financially, you can't really separate
They go hand in
what
hand.
you do. Just like I had a show where I had a case manager and a guardian that worked together out of the same office. A tremendous advantage to do, and you both know who I'm talking about. But what are some of the things that you think, both of you think, that families could do to make this situation I've described not happen when we think about opening and closing a year? Bill, what do you think?
Well,
legally?
one is to ask the right questions when you show up for Christmas. You know, go back over what is mom and dad's estate plan. What is mom and dad's plan if they become incapacitated? Who's going to make the decisions? What, you know, if they have a long-term care event, how are they planning on paying for it? You know, a lot of the worst decisions I see that are made are when you have one of these crises and then everybody resorts to self-help based on a rumor from a neighbor next door that the state's going to come take your house. And then all of a sudden people are moving assets and going down to office supply store and getting powers of attorney there and doing homemade wills over the internet. And then they expect all this somehow to work when they need it to work. So the best idea is to go get your parents, have the documents reviewed, have the financial plan reviewed, have a plan is part of the process. A lot of people just don't simply plan for these events.
You got the legal aspect. A lot of the legal aspect laps over into the financial side of it, but there is a financial side that's separate and independent from the legal side. What is that, Beth?
Yeah, the integration is critical. And to his point, timing is everything. The time to have those conversations is when mom and dad appear to be healthy and you're not dealing with that emotion and the chaos, as you said, of the moment. So the timing is critical, that you get together. You know, if your parents are 60 or 65, there's a good chance they've got a good 20, 30 years left in retirement. So the time to be having those conversations and that open dialogue is when they're healthy. People don't necessarily want to talk about the mortality. I've had people tell me, but if I buy that life insurance, then I'm going to die.
I'm glad you talk about this 20-year thing. You know, by the time people see this show, I'll be well into my 81st year. So I do remember when I was 65 talking about all this stuff.
Yeah, it's important.
The point is, time does pass.
It does.
And while we think that we have all the time in the world
We do not.
to make an adequate financial or legal plan, we don't always have that time.
That's right.
So it's best to be prepared. Being prepared and ensuring that you start the new year out as best you can, legal-wise and financial-wise. How can you do it legal-wise, Bill? What are
Well,
some of the more
let's
important
talk
things?
about that, because there is being prepared and there's also being vigilant. Being prepared means you go and have these, you know, the documents done, like a will or a trust for your estate planning. You have a power of attorney, a healthcare surrogate to put your financial and healthcare decision makers in place. and you have a plan for your long-term care. Perhaps you buy long-term care insurance. Being vigilant means going back and checking that plan, because things may have changed. Maybe you don't want to leave 1/3 of your estate to a son who got arrested and went to prison. Maybe you also name that same son as your power of attorney, and now that doesn't seem like a very good idea. And maybe your long-term care insurance pays $100 a day, but now a nursing home costs $300 a day. If you haven't kept up with having your documents looked at and kept up with the changes in your life, you may have some problems. So there is a point that you have to also remind yourself to not just throw all this in a drawer and say, oh yeah, I have this, and when the day comes, I hope it works. You have to constantly review that. And we run into that a lot, where people have the documents, they think they're covered. I run into it with powers of attorney. Just because a document's entitled durable power of attorney doesn't mean that that person you give that power to can do everything they need to do. They only have the powers that are in that document.
That's the important thing.
Right.
We've never done a show where we don't eventually get into a durable power of attorney sometime. And while people like to think they understand that document, many people don't understand it, because a durable power of attorney only covers the delineated aspects in that power. Correct?
Yeah, so that when you give an agent that power, they only have the power that is given in that document. And in Florida, you specifically have to give somebody a power. So if you don't specifically give them a power to do something, you just give them a general, like real estate transactions or something. Those typically don't work very well in Florida because you're not very specific. So not all durable power of attorneys are created equally. Okay, so the ones you may get on the internet versus the one from the office supply store versus the one from an attorney's office may all vary greatly. So just because you have a document that says durable power of attorney on the top of it, don't think you're covered.
And it's not going to do the job you think it's going to do.
It may not. Correct.
Beth, on a financial planning side, where does a financial advisor work in with an attorney in doing what we're talking about? And I'm concerned when Bill talks about financial planning, do you work with an attorney to help put together the total estate plan from the financial advisor viewpoint? How do you do that?
Very frequently we work with both attorney and accountant, because there also might be tax considerations when we're working their plan. That plan is a living, breathing document. Just like the legal documents need to be reviewed in a regular way, so do the financial documents. And so often what we'll do, we'll either meet directly with the attorney and the client and kind of make sure that we have no gaping holes there, or we'll just communicate regularly with the accountant and the attorney to make sure that we haven't missed something that they knew that we didn't know.
I was listening to the Dave Ramsey show yesterday, and Dave Ramsey was talking about mutual funds inside a variable annuity, saying that this is a tool that more people need to understand, because you can guarantee your principal. Your money is not as fluid as you want, but that's one of the reasons that it's not as fluid. You have to leave it in there longer, but people gain the advantage of having the mutual funds work for them, getting a higher rate of return, not like a 1% or 0.5% on a CD. What is your thought on Dave Ramsey?
Well, first of all, I'm a facilitator for Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University.
Oh, you are?
I am.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, all right.
So I'm very familiar with him, and he has impacted millions of lives from a budgeting standpoint, a get out of debt standpoint, and that kind of thing. So he does touch a little bit on investments, but primarily get out of debt, stay out of debt, live and give. So he has great principles. I think the point that you were alluding to was that you can have different types of investments. Some that have guarantees like an annuity might be something that you look at that going to that bucket of money later, so you have a chance to really build up those guaranteed values for guaranteed income, where just being directly in mutual funds outside of annuity, that's going to be your more liquid bucket of money that you're likely to go to sooner and draw on a little sooner, depending on your plan.
Yeah, what I wanted to, the emphasis I wanted to draw on this was that you talked about doing things differently and being used. The second one was vigilant. What was the first word you used?
Prepared.
Prepared and vigilant. You may prepare documents financially and legally, but they change. And with the financial markets we have now, people get discouraged. But if they follow and talk to somebody that can help them put a steady hand on what they're doing or not doing, many times he can take a lot of the stress off, and they can do better financial wise.
It's all about the plan.
Yeah.
It's about having a plan, something to follow, even though you may tweak it along the way. The relief that we see in people, and I'm sure you have the same exact experience. They come in, shoulders down, nervous, don't think they're going to be able to be prepared, don't think they'll ever be able to retire. But it's amazing their attitude shift when they actually have a plan and something in writing where they actually have a goal that they look like they could actually attain. It's amazing.
From a legal and a financial viewpoint, how can people, especially as we end an old and open a new year, what are some of the things that people should be thinking, especially seniors? What should we be thinking about, Bill? I'm going to ask you the same question, Beth.
Well, has there been any major life changes over the past year? Did somebody get divorced? Did they die? Did they get married? Was a child born? Any of those kinds of things, because those can impact your estate planning, who you want to leave your assets to and how you want to leave those to those people. Pull out the documents where you've named people to make decisions for you. Has there been any change in that? How is your health? Has there been any major health changes? Do you have a illness that may result in a long-term care situation in the future? Has your decision maker, have they had an illness? So, you have to look at what's been happening in your life over the past year and how that impacts your planning.
One thing I think is what we often forget about, and is extremely important in Florida, the aspect of second marriages.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of advice could you give to our viewers on what they should or should not do, and how to make sure the second marriage outcome works the way the two second marriages wanted to work?
Yeah, it's not enough just to get married and say, I'm going to leave what I have to my kids and you leave what you have to your kids. There are some things that happen under the law. The Florida Constitution has a homestead provision that provides a surviving spouse with a life estate in a homestead property at a minimum. There also is a elective share statute where a surviving spouse could be entitled to a portion of the decedent spouse's estate. Usually that's about 30%. And so if you don't know about these laws and how they impact your estate planning, you really need to get in and see an attorney about that, because there are certain rights that a spouse has just by virtue of being married. So it's not simply enough to say, I'm going to have my will and it'll say everything goes to my kids, because even that plan could be upset by these laws.
Okay. Beth, the same question. You got to give different answers than he did, but I want you to talk about this part of it now.
So what he said, plus,
Right.
This is the time of year that we're doing a lot of reviewing. This is the time when you look and see, again, if things have changed, does that mean maybe your risk tolerance has changed in terms of how your investments are positioned? Have you reviewed your beneficiaries? Do you have stated beneficiaries on your account? If it's not an IRA or a 401k, are your accounts titled to automatically transfer through, at the time of death, through either POD or TOD, payable on death or transfer on death, to make sure that you can avoid some probate issues, and who you had hoped your funds would go to if you should move to heaven, that's who they'd actually go to. So beneficiary reviews, risk tolerance reviews, am I still in the right mix of investments? And do my kids know where my documents are? Do my kids know what my desires are if I left this earth?
And I think it's also important as we grow older, realizing the importance of stability of our funds and adjusting our lifestyles so that we can live within the funds we have available to us, that all plans can change.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what Bill is saying from a legal aspect, but from a financial aspect side of it, we can adjust and we can take a look, and we should be alert to what the market is doing. And right now, with the way the market is going up and down every day, I don't even know where it is today, but I like the last several days where it's gone back up. Yeah. And if we had a crystal ball where we could sell when it's high and wait till it drops down, it'd be great. But I think history shows that people that try that, unless you really are lucky and really know what you're doing, you end up losing. So I had somebody tell me a long time ago, if you don't have the money to put in the stock market, don't do it.
Fair point.
But if you don't use the stock market, how can you even hope to cope with the swings of the market, Beth? Or can you?
It's very challenging, especially in this low interest rate environment, to help seniors who are either already in retirement or knocking on the door of retirement. Because you still have to be fiscally responsible enough to say, if I'm retiring in 1 or 2 years, I can't be out there on the risk curve like I was when I was funneling money into a 401k. So it's a delicate balance. It takes very, very careful discussions. We have to understand our clients very well, their risk tolerance, their cushion, what other assets do they have, what if, and position them based on risk tolerance, time horizon, how long they have before they need to touch the assets.
Okay, a common thread that both of you have talked about is the word documents. And both of you have talked about it, but I'll put it just in a simple layman's term. The importance of assembling documents in one place and people knowing and having access to those documents. From a legal aspect, Bill, why is this so important?
Well, usually if you have some sort of catastrophe, it's too late. So you're not going to be able to go out and do new documents or get them done for the first time. So having documents done and having a plan in place and having those documents and plan all in one place so that somebody knows where to go in the case of emergency becomes very important.
Yep. These funeral homes have a planning guide. It's 7, 8, 9 pages long. In reality, if you look at that thing, they ask you the right questions in there. Do you have that same type of document?
Yes.
You do?
I have one too, yeah.
Do you have one?
And hospice offers the
See,
5
I'm
wishes
learning.
plan, which is great.
I knew the funeral home had it. I knew the other leg that was missing here today had it, but I didn't know you two had it.
Right.
How can they get that thing from you?
They just need to call the office and we could get that to them. There are a lot of different ones available. If you go to a bookstore, there's even books on that, the whole thing. Talked about, stuff.
I don't want to make it complicated. Most seniors, they won't even fill out a piece of paper if it looks like it's too doggone complicated.
True.
The simpler we can make it.
Just make a notebook. Notebook and put all the information in it. Where all your assets are, who all your family addresses, how to get a hold of everybody, your insurance information, health care, life insurance, disability insurance if you have it, and then basically where all the assets are. And
if you can keep it in one location, that's
Right.
a huge help.
At home, I have my second drawer down on the left-hand side of my desk is where I've told our executor to go in. The insurance policies are lined up, the financial stuff, it's all there in one drawer, so our son, who's the executor of the will would know where to go.
And you just hit
to
the nail
find
on the head.
documents.
You told someone where it is.
But even though I know that there's a lot more that needs to be done, so I've made it one of my, what do they call it, New Year's resolutions to fill out that book I have,
Good.
and I'm going to do it. Whether I really want to do it or not, I'm going to do it because I know that it needs to be done.
If you think of it as a love letter to your family members, it's a gift that you're giving them to make it all simplified, to find everything in one place, and it's really a nice touch if you can put little notes in there. If you're talking about assets, items that you're leaving for them, give a little story about that item. It means a lot to your loved ones.
My children want me to tell about all the assets, all the things we have in the house. They want to know the history behind all this stuff. I don't know if I got enough time left in my life to do that. But that's why it's so important for us to do television shows where we can get across the importance of the legal side and the financial side, because you work together, and families that think you can work these two sides of this three-legged stool apart are making a very, very bad mistake. Mm-hmm. In closing the program, Bill, what would you recommend that people do to protect themselves at the end of the year and as we start a new year? What are the most important things to think about? You got to do it next.
Well, be prepared first, come up with a plan, and then update your plan. So if you don't have a plan, get one in place, get your documents done. If you have a plan, make sure you're reviewing it and updating it regularly.
Okay, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
If people wanted to ask you about what we're talking about on this show, I think if they call 253-1667, I want a consultation, you welcome the consultation, and that consultation's free.
Correct.
If an attorney doesn't want to help understand what my needs are, I don't want to go to him. Same thing for a financial advisor. Based on what he said, what would you say?
Right. Our consultations are also complimentary. Thorough review of the plan, communication with the children. We invite the adult children to come in and meet with us as well, so mom's not saying one thing and the child saying another, adult child. Have the conversations together as a family. I think most advisors would agree that having both generations or even 3 generations teach those young ones early is a huge part of just protecting the family in the future.
Makes a big difference, and I know. Bill, Beth, I want to thank you for being here as we did this closing and opening year show, and I hope we've sort of whetted the appetites of people to call both of you to see how they can do a better job for planning in the future. And I want to thank you, viewer, for watching today's episode of Helping Seniors. If you have questions or comments, please call us at 321-473-7770. For more information on senior care and resources, visit our website at helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Be sure to listen to Helping Seniors on radio station WMEL AM 1300 every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. and look for our Helping Seniors newsletter in our center section of Senior Scene magazine each month and our column in Hometown News.